not in any particular order, but here we go. One important thing, charge what you're worth. Now, unfortunately, people associate price with value. So if your prices are too low, people sometimes think that the quality of your work is not up to snuff. So even if it's on par with some higher quality work, because it's so cheap, people are going to think it's not so good. Imagine you go into a store and you see some brand name clothing being sold for $1. You're going to think, what's wrong with this stuff? Even if it's the same product that you can find in a high-end store. Well, it's the same thing with services. If someone says they're going to build your house for 20 cents, you're going to run as far away as you can. So you got to think about all this stuff. Now, you can't charge too much, and you shouldn't charge too little either. Because here are some other things that you should think about. If your prices are too high and the quality of your work does not match up, that's going to be a problem. You're not going to have a lot of repeat customers and you won't get any referrals. When you charge too little, then you're doing yourself and others a disservice, especially others who've invested a lot of time and money into their craft. True professionals who've been doing it much longer than you have, or they're just way better. And the real price for a job, let's say it's $4,000, but then you want to make a quick buck, so you agree to do the same job for $200. Even if it's not as good, but it's good enough, you're doing a disservice to someone who has invested time in their craft, and now you're undercutting them. And also, you're making it hard for yourself. So let's say later on when you get really good and you now have a $2,000 lens, a $4,000 camera, and you're still doing jobs that are worth more, but you're doing them for $200. You're never going to make a living. Even if you're doing it for the love of it, that's basically a waste of your talent and your time. Last thing about this, well, kind of the last thing. If you charge too little, people think that you don't take your craft seriously. And they won't take you seriously because you're undervaluing your work. So what do? Well, one easy way, sometimes I do this, but not quite often. One easy way to start is to look at others who are better than you. What are they charging? And then you want to suggest a price to clients that is not up to where others that are better than you are charging, but below that, with the understanding that they won't get that high quality work or something like that, right? So it's almost like you under promise but over deliver, right? So you don't want to over promise, overcharge, and under deliver. So charge them $4,000 for a job and then give them the work that's really worth $400. So think about all these things, but you got to charge what you're worth. Another thing is, if clients ask for a lower price in exchange for referrals, that's a crappy deal. And it's a telltale sign that you should just walk away. If you can't get them to understand, listen, this is your price, this is what you've worked out. I'm not saying you can't negotiate. But in my experience, the people who say, if you give me a lower deal, I'll make sure I refer you to my friends or to a bunch of people that I know who want this stuff. If your work is good and they are satisfied, which would be the priority, they're going to refer you regardless. People don't refer you because you're cheap. People refer you because your work is good. They'll more likely pay for expensive stuff if it's good, and not for cheap stuff if their memories are captured in a way that is not satisfactory. So that's a crappy deal, right? Don't worry about it. Someone says, I'll refer you. Don't even take that deal. You just explain to them, find a way to communicate. This is your work. This is how much the price is. And this person is trying to get one over on you right away. Because that never happens, hardly ever happens when you give someone a deal and they're going to refer you. Because they're trying to undercut you out the gate. Remember that when you're charging for, this is a common misconception. When someone says, we're only here for 2 hours. Why are you charging me X amount of dollars? What sometimes we don't think about, especially when we're just starting out, and what some clients don't understand, is not just the time that you're on site. It's the travel time, it's the gas, the editing services, the editing time, the other software, the computer, the electricity, the internet. And if you are self-employed or it's your sole source of income, now you got to think about other bills you got to pay, right? So you might only be on set filming for 2 hours, but you got to show up sometimes an hour, 2 hours before to set up, get ready, or maybe plan a shoot, give a script, sometimes get lighting, all that stuff. So it's not the same as when you get a job, a 9 to 5, and they're saying they're paying you, say, $40, $50 an hour, right? And that might sound good when someone says, well, I'm going to pay you $100 an hour for photography or videography. It shouldn't be like that. When an electrician shows up at your house, quite often you're paying for the service. So some electricians, if not all of them, most of them will say, what's the job you need me to do? And you'll tell them, I want this done. They'll say, well, it's $500. No, it doesn't matter if they come and they get it done in 2 minutes. It's still $500. This is just how it is. You're not paying per hour. You're paying for the service, not a rate, right? So think about all this stuff, and you got to make sure you're charging what you're really worth. And the last thing I'll say about this is, if you're not charging enough because you're not good enough, well, do what you have to get better. Keep practicing, keep studying, and then you can start charging more money. People will notice. Beware of people who will take advantage of you. I am talking about when you're just starting out, there are people who will set up companies and take clients under the promise that they have professionals working for them. In essence, what they're doing is they're charging the clients for a service and then outsourcing it to others. But they're not paying a fair price. So what some clients don't know, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to watch this video anyways, but in case someone does watch it, what clients don't know, they might pay, say, $4,000 for a wedding video or for some kind of photography gig. And then this person puts an ad on Craigslist for $400 for a videographer. And they pocket all that money. And they might even go out and pay an editor to do it. So basically what they are is a middle person. And so they get the bulk of the money, pay an editor a couple of hundred, pay a videographer another couple of hundred, and they keep the rest of it for themselves. Now, you can't hate the game, but they're not doing the work. Now, it could also be that when people are searching for services, this is all that they can find. And it's only when you go on the internet, someone Googles wedding videographer, they find these big name companies. But quite often they're not doing the work themselves. And so people like myself who are just starting out, we get used to do some of this job for pennies on the dollar, right? So beware of that. The other thing is some clients want a Hollywood production without the cost of a Hollywood production. And that might be self-explanatory, but so they might want to pay you what they think is a fair amount of money, say a couple of $100s, right? But then they want it to look like a blockbuster film. Can you make this? Can you do this? Can you edit this in it? I'm all for revising, but you gotta make sure people understand, listen, if you want all these changes, you gotta be ready to pay up, right? So you can't pay me a couple $100s and then expect it to have color grading and expect it to have fancy graphics and all this editing and music and so on and so forth. It's gonna cost you some money, and here's what it is. Now, which leads to the next bit. Once you've outlined the terms, make sure you have a contract. And this is to make sure that the client's expectations, your delivery methods of payment, timing and all that is clear for all parties involved. So you know what the client's expecting, the client knows what you can deliver, the client knows when you're going to deliver it, and they've agreed to a certain price, right? And the contract should be signed and dated by everyone. This is just how it is. I think this is how it should be. Don't take someone's word of mouth. I remember one time I did a job for someone, and unfortunately, it was through a referral. So, well, not unfortunately. Fortunately, it was through a referral, but unfortunately, I did not have a contract. So it was all through word of mouth. Yeah, I'm going to do this video. We had these ideas. We're going to do it. But there was no end date. There was no end. There was no final point to the contract or to the agreement, meaning what would be the point at which we've agreed that we were done. So what kept happening was, yeah, can you do this thing? And can you put this in it? And it just kept going back and forth and back and forth for months. And that's terrible. Meanwhile, I haven't gotten full, I didn't get full payment for the job yet. So the terms of the agreement should be laid out in a contract. And that's very, very important. So at this date, 2 weeks later, you will have the first edit. How many revisions you'll get, this is what you get. You'll also get the raw footage. And here's when I should get paid, and so on and so forth. Very, very important. What else we got? If once you've accepted a job and you think you're ready, prepare some more, because it's a thing you're gonna learn. You're gonna make mistakes regardless. I've made a bunch of mistakes. I actually got on a job one time, and I had a wireless mic. Actually, it was a free thing I was doing for a museum, and I forgot to plug in the mic in the camera. And that mic at the time did not record audio on the transmitter. So all I had was backup mic or backup sound from a cell phone and a backup shotgun, which worked out fine. But you know, prepare, run through the whole shot list, run through what you're going to capture. So it starts with what does the client want captured, and then you go through what are the best ways to capture this, and then come up with a contingency plan for almost every scenario. So you got to think about things like, will there be power sockets? Do you need a dummy battery? Do you need extra batteries? How many SD cards do you need? Are you going to be editing on the side? Are you going to be delivering the stuff to them on an SD card? Or is it going to be electronic? All this stuff. So you run through it a couple times, write it down if you have to, and then that's before you even get on the set. And then the couple days before, I always set a reminder to charge batteries and to make sure the lenses are clean, check the sensors, make sure they're clean and spot free, that kind of stuff. And then once you're on site, I also have a checklist of making sure that the white balance is set. If you're using white balance, you're not using auto white balance. And next to a road, so if you hear that noise, this is just how it is. You know, go through all that stuff. You got to make sure that your volume levels are set. You got a gray card. You got your lighting set and your positions and so on and so forth. And then make sure you get there on time or early enough so you have time to set this up. So if you think the shoot is an hour, plan for at least another hour to get there before to set up, depending on how much equipment you have to use to capture what the client wants. You don't have to bring as much as you think, right? So I remember one time I went to a job and I brought too much stuff. The list is too long. I had bags and bags of stuff, and this was another free gig. Bags and bags and bags of stuff, and it was just not necessary. It took me too long to set up, too long to manage. It was just me, still just me, and you don't need as much as you think. So just go bare bones and then a little bit, and you should be fine. You might think you're impressing the client when you bring a bunch of stuff, but sometimes I can look clumsy, or you can look clumsy if you have a bunch of stuff and you're fiddling for too long at the last minute, taking you a while just to fidget with stuff. If you bring less stuff, you look more organized and you're not digging around in your bag for things that you don't even need. Ideally, I like to have a truck where I can keep stuff in. I think I saw one on YouTube where someone just had the truck and they kept everything in it. That would be pretty cool. But if you're like me, you have stuff in your home or in a closet somewhere, you don't gotta clear out your whole closet to go do one job, one video job or one photography job. Just bring the bare bones. You don't have to say yes to every job. Some jobs cost you more in time and energy, frustration, and so on, than it's worth, and it's not worth the hassle. For that reason, keep a healthy list of fellow photographers, videographers, to whom you can refer these jobs that you can't take, right? Some of the reasons I say no to a job is, like one time I got offered a gig, and the gig was to shoot a wedding as a second shooter, and they made sure they put in the print 3 hours work, $200. All right, so that sounds pretty good, right? But then it would have taken me over an hour to get there. So we're talking about an hour and 20 minutes drive one way, hour and 20 minutes drive back. No traffic, if there's no traffic. So if it starts at 2, I have to get there at at least 1 to set up. So yes, it's $200, but we're talking about 6.5 hours worth of work. I might as well go work at Best Buy. I get a regular 9 to 5, right? As much as I love this stuff, but you gotta just think which one of these jobs are worth it, and just say no, because the truth is these little jobs are not gonna it's not gonna make or break your career. True, that's just how it is. And you can, it's better if you want practice. It's better to just go out to the park or get a friend and just practice on them, your videography or photography skills, than do a cheap job that's way out of your way. You can find friends and do things for free for them, and they'll gladly accept. The last thing is, it's never been easier to get started creating stuff, right? You don't have to have a fancy camera. If you got a cell phone, you can start creating. And no, cell phones, at least for the foreseeable future, will never replace a camera. It won't happen. I don't care what people say. Try to take a picture with your cell phone at night. It's not going to rival what you can get with a camera and a flash. But let's be honest. When they advertise these camera features on cell phones, most people are never going to take advantage of these features on their cell phones. This is just the fact of the matter, right? Most people use their cell phones to do YouTube, Google, text, make calls. That's it. And they open up the camera app and they snap a picture. The average person is not going to adjust aperture, shutter speed, white balance, and focus area on their cell phone, even though the options are there. You can get some beautiful pictures and video with your cell phone, but people are not going to do it, which is why there is always going to be a market for professionals. And the people who are able to make these adjustments with their cell phone are going to be people who know about cameras and will already have a camera. So no, cell phones will not replace photography, videography. Even these fancy AI things that they have out on Adobe and all these myriad of apps and websites that give you AI control over photo and video. Again, the average person will not know how to use this because it's built on a foundation of having the knowledge about composition and photography, videography, and so on and so forth. So if you have that background, then it's easier to transition into the AI technology. But if you're just starting out, the average person is not going to dive into the AI stuff and start using text generate to create a photo or a video. And then if they have their special moment, they're not going to take the chance and just use their cell phone to take a picture if they want high quality photo / video of their wedding day or some kind of celebration. It's never been easier to get started though. So if you are trying to be a professional or you want to get into it and you only have a cell phone, you can. Start with auto, doesn't matter. Start making anything, creating anything, whether it's YouTube or whatever it is, or of yourself, vlog, something. It's never been a better time to get into it. Because you can just go on YouTube right now and Google anything aspect of the craft, and someone will teach you how to do it for free, right? So this is just how it is. So don't get hung up on gear, but I mean, eventually you're gonna need some good gear, I think, but you don't need it to get started. All right, cool. So these are the things I learned in the short time I've been taking this seriously. Take it easy.